Council will come to order. It is 7 p.m. and we do have a quorum. Councilmember Kurtz will be late but should be here. In just a moment, I'll ask everyone to stand and we'll be led in an invocation by Councilmember Perro. Followed by that, we'll be led in the pledges to the U.S. flag and the Texas flag by Councilmember Schaffner. Would you please stand?
Let us pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for this day, for the opportunity we have to come together this evening. We ask your guidance. We ask for your support as this council discusses the business of Trophy Club, that all the decisions we make would be done with the best intentions, listening to those who have input, and weighing those decisions carefully, as is our duty. We ask you to watch over us as we serve our citizens here in Trophy Club. We ask all this in Christ's name. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
You may be seated. Citizens' presentations. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the council on any matter, whether or not it is posted on the agenda. The council is not permitted to take action on or discuss any presentations made to the council at this time concerning an item not listed on the agenda. The council will hear presentations on specific agenda items prior to the council addressing those items. You may speak up to 4 minutes or the time limit determined by the mayor or presiding officer. To speak during this item, you must complete the speaker's form that includes the topics of your statements. Topics of presentation should be limited to matters over which the council has authority. Holly, did we get anybody to sign up?
No, Mayor.
All right. Anyone in the audience wanting to speak? Seeing no one, we will move on. Consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the town council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be a separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Council, does anyone wish to remove any of the items 1 through 6?
I'd like to remove number 6, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Mr. Perro wants to remove number 6. Anybody else? All right. I would read items 1 through 5 and then entertain a motion. Consider and take appropriate action regarding the minutes dated September 22nd, 2015. Item 2, consider and take appropriate action regarding the minutes dated September 28th, 2015. Item 3, consider and take appropriate action regarding financial and variance report dated September 2015. Item 4, consider and take appropriate action regarding the fourth quarter investment report for fiscal year 2015. Item 5, consider and take appropriate action regarding the approval of the town's application for Electric Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT, membership in 2016 and the ERCOT membership agreement, authorizing the payment and required membership fees, and authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute all necessary documents. Do I have a motion to approve consent items 1 through 5?
I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 5.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Mayor Pro Tem Lamont moved and Councilmember Rowe seconded. All in favor, show your hands. All opposed, same sign. It is approved. At this time, we'll call up item 6. Consider take appropriate action regarding the resolution of Town Council in support of statewide Proposition 7 for increased state funding for transportation and providing an effective date. Councilmember Perro removed that. Jim, do you want to make comment?
I just had a question about it. Due to the fact there are 7 propositions on the ballot, each one sponsored and supported by a different legislator, I'm just wondering about the appropriateness of selecting 1 out of 7 constitutional amendments to publicly support with the town and not do the same for the other 6. I'm just questioning.
There were no requests from any other organization to take such action. So although there are other state props on the ballot, no one requested this. The Regional Transportation Council is in fact just that. It's the North Central Texas Council of Governments Regional Transportation Council, and they were requesting that local jurisdictions pass something to show their support for that item. Just another way to get it into the press, get it in front of people, and to try to make sure that we get transportation funding as proposed. All right, so at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve item 6.
I'll make a motion to approve item 6 as
Do I have a
presented.
second? I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lamont, seconded by Councilmember Schaffner. Any other discussion? Anyone? All right, all those in favor, show your hands. All opposed, same sign. Pero votes against, everyone else for. All right, regular council session. Receive public input regarding the police and town hall facility. Discussion of same is item number 7. Anyone in the audience want to make comments or ask questions about the proposed new building? If anyone is wanting to see the scale model, it is on display in the Public Services Building in the lobby. So anytime that those doors are open, you can see it in that location if you'd like to see what it looks like in an elevation change. It does a good job of showing how that elevation change is, and it also does a good job showing the preservation of trees at the area that's closest to Hannah Court Homes. All right, no one else? Item 8, consider take appropriate action regarding an ordinance of the town repealing Section A, reservations, of Section 8.12, Parks and Recreation, of Article 8, Schedule of Fees of Chapter 1, Administration, and adopting a new Section 8.12A, Reservations, of Article 8, Chapter 1 of the Code of Ordinances, adopting park fees for pavilion rental and tournaments, providing for publication, and providing an effective date. Staff, did anyone want to make a comment about it?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is coming back to the Town Council, is the proposal of a gate fee instead of a flat tournament fee. This is something that I know the Council had expressed interest in us exploring, and after doing some research and looking at area cities as well as looking at the financial aspect, the proposed is that we would do a $150 gate fee. That would be if we would host an internal tournament, just the Trophy Club, we're the host, it would be $150 per team. If we were part of a larger tournament that was regional and we would host, let's say, 25 teams, those 25 teams they would have to pay our $150 gate fee. One of the other things that we've proposed is if there was an overflow for some reason, if there was an overflow of teams or games that they needed either an existing tournament or a tournament that was hosted by a different city, they needed fields, they could contact us, and it would be an $85 per game fee. So it would be just on a per game basis. That's something similar that the city of Grapevine has currently at the same rate, and we know that the city of Southlake is currently exploring that. With that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2015-37, Schedule of Fees.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2015-37, Schedule of Fees.
Have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lamont and a second by Councilmember Rowe. Any discussion, council? Questions?
Yeah, I had a question. I noticed there towards the end, you mentioned soccer. Do they have tournaments now that you know of?
They had, Councilman Schaffner, they had one tournament last year. It was called a Quick Foot tournament, and they ran it more as a skills session for the local, because they really don't participate in tournaments, so they ran it as sort of a benefit for the local group. But as their fields really are more, we'll say a little more temperamental than baseballs, we really don't want to set them up for hosting tournaments. We're really not set up for that. That's why I suggested it'd be something that they work out individually with council if they want to do one. And I don't anticipate them wanting to do more than one. They didn't do one the year before. So that since in the last 5 years, they may have done 3.
So you're suggesting that it just be in the contract, not in the schedule of fees?
Correct. Because we will not rent out tournaments. In other words, no one's going to approach us to use our soccer fields for tournaments, and we wouldn't allow it. The additional use would really just be too much.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote to approve ordinance 2015-37. All in favor, show your hands. All opposed, same sign. It is unanimous. Item number 9, consider and take appropriate action regarding a right-of-way encroachment and joint use agreement between the town and Trophy Club Municipal Utility District Number 1 for wastewater treatment plant site, and authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute all necessary documents. I would entertain a motion to approve the right-of-way encroachment and joint use agreement.
I'll make a motion to approve the right-of-way encroachment and joint use agreement.
Do you have a second? Motion made by Pero, seconded by Kurtz. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those approve, show your hands. All opposed, same sign. It is unanimous. Item 10, discuss and provide direction to staff regarding potential amendments to the town golf cart ordinance in order to address the use of special vehicles on town roads. There's some information that has been provided to us, and we do have Lieutenant Shields here tonight to answer any questions about that. In general, this came up because a couple of citizens contacted me as they had a difficulty in trying to get their vehicle, whether it was referred to as a low-speed vehicle or various other names that people call them by, to be able to use it in town. And our ordinance talks about it, but there are a couple of points that are maybe a little, or could be made decisions for us. And so, Patricia, would you kind of delineate where we are in that ordinance and what can and can't be done?
Our ordinance does allow neighborhood electric vehicles and low-speed vehicles, NEV and LSV. It does already allow that because state law allows it. State law would have allowed us to prohibit those, but our ordinance does not. So they are allowed. They are required to have a license plate issued by the state of Texas. So the ordinance says no permits required because there's really no reason for a permit to be required if they have a license in the state of Texas. As long as they have that license, they can drive that throughout the town. There is a limited operation provision in the statute that basically says they can drive it within 2 miles of golf course to and from during daylight hours without a license plate. But if it's someone who wants to drive it within the town, then they're going to need to get a license plate from the state, and there's no need for a town permit.
But if in fact they wanted to take the provision to say, I'm not going to get a license plate, I'm going to do it daylight hours to and from the golf course, currently we don't require them to register it.
We do not require a permit. Our ordinance says no permit is required.
So that's one option you could say you want to do if they do that. And then it seems it's a little confusing about license plate and daylight hours and some of that. Didn't you have a question, Philip?
Because if you read the ordinance, it actually gives 3 limited operations. It says 1 in a master plan community, that has that has a place in that has in place a uniform set of restrictive covenants, and then it says and B for which a county or municipality has approved a plat. So we, I guess, fall into those 2 categories.
Well, we do in individual areas of the town. We always refer to ourselves as a master plan community.
Right.
But for purposes of this statute, we're not a master plan community throughout the town. We have master plan communities within the town, but not throughout, since we have different subdivisions. That would be like a Hogan's Glen, something like that.
Because it seems like when it says limited operation, it gives that as one example. Then on a public or private beach, or on any public highway where the posted speed limit is less than 35 miles, then that triggers the during the daytime and the not more than 2 miles from the location, and if you're going back and forth from the golf course, kind of like what we had before with the golf carts.
Right.
So it seems like that they could do that now as is.
Right.
You know, but they can't really do what a golf cart does without a license plate.
Right.
Lieutenant Shields, did you have some comments or things you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that our current ordinance also allows for golf carts to do that from their house to the golf course without a permit. So that, those two things are exactly the same. Where we fall into an issue with having these NEV and LVS permitted is that state law requires them to be licensed with very few limited operation restrictions. So the reason they want these permits is simply to circumvent having to have them registered. And we are not an authority that's able to circumvent the state law. We can make restrictions more than state law, but we can't be less. So we can't waive their need to have these registered as required by state law.
There might have been some confusion that they thought maybe if I have the permit, I don't need the license, but that's not accurate. They really don't need the permit, they have to have the license.
And this is one of those situations to where, you know, when I've sat with our folks and talked about this, I don't see much difference. But the state does for some reason, and it's maybe an old law or maybe it's something that will change in the future because, you know, I'm like, well, this is not any different than a golf cart in my opinion, but the state interprets it as something different.
How many,
Well, the NEVs have a VIN number. They are considered a motor vehicle by
Right.
state law. Golf carts do not. They have serial numbers. So I think that's where they're really making their distinguishing between the two as a motor vehicle versus a golf cart.
Garrett?
how many of these have been presented to our police department and turned away because of this?
Two.
Two. My opinion is we leave it alone.
So to me, the only option would be, do you want to require a permit if they're not?
Or even if they are licensed.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Do you want to require a permit whether they're licensed or not?
We would have the liberty of adding that layer on top of the state requirement, which seems kind of superfluous to me. I don't know why we'd want to deal with that.
And we already addressed that in our golf cart ordinance because we actually specify low-speed vehicle and neighborhood electric vehicles, and we say a town permit is not required for those vehicles because they fall under the transportation code, not under a city code.
Yeah.
And I think what I did find out from the people that at least approached me, I know one of them did approach you, Tracy, was they eventually went and got a license plate, but they ended up getting a motorcycle license plate because DPS didn't know what to do with it, and at first denied her, and she said, well, go to your website and look here. You have a picture on your website of the exact vehicle I have, other than it's not mine, same color, and they couldn't figure out exactly what to do. So it obviously doesn't happen a whole lot, but it's interesting if you begin to look at that. All of a sudden, these small electric cars that are coming out kind of fall into the same category, where the manufacturers are creating very small two-passenger total electric vehicles, and that's maybe why the state is trying to regulate them. Is that increases? How do we want to deal with that? All right, so I think I agree. I'm not sure there's any action we need to take unless somebody wants to require registration. So, does anybody want to do anything?
Not here.
All right, then we will just move on, and there'll be no action on item 10. Tracy, are you okay in the sense of what you have to tell people and what you need to do?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Item 11, discuss and provide direction to staff regarding potential amendments to the town overnight parking ordinance and permit system, including extended temporary permits. That is ordinance, the old ordinance was 2011-39, which is available to you. And Philip, I think, had some comments or some information.
Yeah, you probably will rue the day that you ever gave me access to Laserfish. This actually started in 1986-09 was the first ordinance. And it's almost exactly what we have today. It was 3 to 5 a.m. It was a $200 fine at the time. But there was no provision for...
$200 fine or permit fee?
No, $200 fine.
Oh.
Up to a $200 fine, which I think today it's much higher. A couple years later, they I guess, realized that they needed to have the ability to permit. You know, people wanted to park the cars on the street or for whatever reason. And so they instituted a $50 fee for each car. You had to have 4 cars at the time in your possession, and you could permit actually all 4 of them if you wanted to. It dropped from April 1st to June 30th, it dropped to $40, and then from July 1st to December 31st, it dropped to $30, so they kind of prorated it. And it stayed like that, and they also added the visitors coming from outside could call the police and tell them that they have visitors coming.
So what did you say the initial annual fee was?
The
I
initial
missed
annual
that.
fee was $50.
Okay.
And actually, they never really specified that it was an annual permit. It may have just been a one-time fee back in those days. And actually 3 weeks later, so we're not the only doofuses, you know. 3 weeks later, they actually added the provision that, not calling them doofuses, but they actually added the provision of 4 more vehicles. So I guess they realized that, you know, everybody was coming in just for one vehicle and everything. It never changed for 15 years. It stayed like that for 15 years. And then on Ordinance 2004-09, they went to $50 per vehicle, non-transferable, good until the vehicle was sold. So they just one-time fee, $50, and you're done. And that stayed on the books until our current mayor's council, when they changed it on 2006, and they actually lowered the 4 vehicles to 3 vehicles, and they raised the fee from $50 to $150, and for the first 3 vehicles, and then on the 4th vehicle it was $50, and the annual renewal was only $10. So they actually had an annual renewal, but it was just $10. And so that stayed until 5 years later, when in 2011 it changed drastically, and that's when you had only 2 permits per household. It went from a renewal fee of $10 to $75, and they didn't prorate anything. It was just calendar year, and then they took off the visitor section and added extraordinary circumstances section, and they added a temporary fee section of $10 for 7 days. So that's kind of the history of how we got there. But for most of our history, it was pretty much, you know, a set fee. Visitors, if they come to town, they could, you know, the resident could call and get an exception for 7 days, and then it just changed, you know, basically in 2011. So there are some slight changes that I would like to suggest, and I think this is mainly just a discussion. I don't think we're taking any action tonight.
Just direction.
Yeah. I think that the fee should just be a flat $100 rate each year. So go from, it's currently at $150, and I think the renewal is $75. I would just like to see it at $100, just $100. I like the, you know, the 2 permits per household, and you can move it around whatever vehicles. I think are we at 3? You have to have 3 vehicles?
We have 4 currently.
Yeah, it's
4.
currently 3 registered to that location.
Okay, so if you have 3 vehicles, you can seek a permit. Okay.
Correct.
And is that what they're wanting to keep it? They're wanting to go to 4?
No, we're.
No,
But one of the things I think should be addressed is, it currently reads 3 vehicles registered to that location. We have a lot of residents in town, and this is where we get a lot of complaints that have company cars. And currently, our ordinance does not allow for them to get a permit for a company vehicle.
So we'll deal with that, I think, in another paragraph where you talked about registered vehicles. Right,
Well,
Philip?
I was kind of unclear on that, how we wanted to handle that. Whether, you know, we wanted to say 3. So how would you determine that? Would you just have them?
Well, I think we actually, when we were discussing this, wanted to take out that whole part that said they had to be registered to the residents.
Okay.
So if they have 3 vehicles, one's a company car, they could still obtain a permit.
So
They
you
didn't
would
have
just
to
have
show
them-
proof
okay.
of
And
registration to that location.
I have no problem with that. you
So
know.
the first decision is do you want to leave the fee at $150 for the first and $75 for the second and subsequent, or do you want to change it, as Philip is suggesting, $100 each? Anybody want to comment?
I like the $100 each and the $100
I have a
annual.
question.
I got a bunch of comments.
Tim, you had your hand up.
I'll go last.
My question just is ballpark, about how many of these do we have out there floating around right now that are valid?
I believe we have 14.
Not very many.
14, only 14 out there?
Now,
And do you feel,
Must all be in my
from
neighborhood.
y'all's perspective, do you feel like it's enforced to the degree that 14 is the 14 people that desperately need one, or if you guys had 40 people on patrol just looking at streets all night, would the number be 200?
Well, I pulled the numbers for the last year from October 27th of 2014 to today. And we've issued 21 citations for violation of the 3 to 5 ordinance and issued 373 warnings. Now, I'll just let you know that most citations are not issued the first time this vehicle is encountered in the road.
Sure.
And in addition to that, if they had a previous warning 2 months earlier, they might get another warning. Usually the citations are reserved to habitual offenders.
Are we slowly moving that curve a little bit?
Having less people apply?
No, ticketing more so people get off the street?
Well,
I
you
mean, I
that's
know in
really
my
hard to
neighborhood, I'll-
determine because I looked at the dates and it looks like they start picking up in March, April, May, June are our hot months for when these warnings are issued, and that kind of coincides with spring break, summertime, vacation time. So we're
okay,
seeing a
so-
lot more warnings during the times where we might be a little bit more inclined to give a little leeway because of vacationing.
I guess
guests
I'm
in
talking
town.
about the habitual people that I see like in my neighborhood that are out every night throughout the year. Are those people being ticketed?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Once we encounter one of these vehicles, they're entered into the computer by plate number. So every time that plate number's run, it's going to show how many times they've been issued warnings, how many times they've been issued citations. So the officer right there is able to determine immediately how many encounters we've had with this vehicle, and if they were for 3 to 5 or another parking violation or
I got you.
speeding violation.
So one of the things that I want to change, because I would imagine that, and I know you probably don't have the numbers, but I would imagine that there are quite a few that are ticketed who are guests, who just come in and they're staying like a brother-in-law or mother-in-law or whoever that stay with the resident, and they may get, a warning. And so one of the sections that I would like to remove is in the I think it's section 4, the first paragraph. Or, let me see if that's it.
First paragraph, page 301 in your packet. A temporary permit authorized by this section shall be issued for the period not to exceed 90 days.
No, I think it's before that then.
Okay, so that would be section 3,
Yeah.
first paragraph. Temporary visitor parking.
Yeah, it's page 300, first paragraph in section 3, and right in the middle it says temporary visitor parking when capacity of driveway is insufficient to hold all motor vehicles. I would just like to strike that particular line, and I want to add back the section that we had for 25 years, which is that if a, and let me.
Just read it. Want me to read it? You got it?
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay.
It shall not be a violation of this ordinance for a non-resident of the town while visiting a resident of the town to park or stand a vehicle owned or controlled by the non-resident on a public street, highway, or other public right-of-way between the hours of 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., provided that notice of such parking or standing is given to the chief of police or designee by no later than 5 p.m. of the immediately previous day. Such parking or standing shall not exceed 7 consecutive days, nor a total of 14 days in any one calendar month. Any vehicle parked as permitted by this section shall be parked directly in front of the resident being visited in such a manner as to not obstruct access to the private driveways of neighboring residents.
So here's to try to get us through this and see if we can give direction to Patricia and to Stephen. the first change that's suggested is change the fee from 150 and 75 to 100.
And
So-
100.
So let's hear how we want to do that, and then that will tell Patricia what to do. And this item will come back with the changes that you can make final decisions about. How does anybody feel about changing those to 100 each?
I support that.
If we only issued 14, I'd be inclined to leave it as is.
All right, anybody else?
I want to leave it.
Leave it as is, all right?
So you're saying it's 125 going to 75?
150
150 going to
and 75 are the two fees, and Philip is saying make it 100 for both.
Yeah, just to make it easier for staff, it's $100 every month, is what you're saying?
No,
Every year, I mean, every year, as opposed to you have to check to see if they got it the year before.
But we haven't dealt with expiration yet. That's just the fee.
But it's for the second year, or is the second car?
$75 is the
Second
renewal
car.
fee. So if you have
It's the
one that's
renewal.
registered, the $75 is the renewal.
Right.
Actually,
For
agree
that.
with you,
You
Tim.
understand what I'm saying? Just making an easy number each year, it's the same.
You buy a new permit every year.
Yeah.
All right, so I had two people kind of not wanting to do that, to make them the same, and one changed their mind. So $100 for each, for first time and renewal.
Renewal. That's my opinion.
Sounds fair enough.
All right, so Patricia and Stephen got that. The second item was what Philip discussed last, and that was strike out temporary visitor parking when capacity of driveway is insufficient to hold all motor vehicles. And add the long paragraph that talked about, doesn't require a permit for a visitor as long as they don't park more than so many days in a row or for the month. I'm not sure, my memory of taking that out was, we didn't really know how many consecutive days, if it's a visitor, and 14 days for the month was extremely hard to
Well,
also deal with.
And I almost left the 14 out and just only had the 7 days, because I think that's pretty easy. If you're gonna have somebody stay 5 days, you can tell the chief that I'm gonna have somebody stay 5 days. If they come back 2 weeks later and they're gonna stay 3 days, you can call again. So I have no problem taking the 14 out, if that becomes, if you think that that's gonna be confusing.
I don't know,
Yeah, I would.
what are the officers gonna have to do to deal with that?
I would remove the 14.
And that's my
Anybody else comments? All right, so remove the 14, but put back in the part about a visitor just needs to report it to the police department
Or the homeowner
or the homeowner. All right.
has to report it.
The next item was on page 301 of the packet, section 4, first paragraph. Philip, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I was more inclined to do a 30-day temporary fee for a 30-day period for $10. And if it's somebody who comes in the summer that stays 2 months, they pay $20 for 60 days, as opposed to 90 days, $10. If they get it for 12 months, obviously it would be better to get the annual fee at that point, because it's $100 instead of the $120. So that's kind of my thinking on that. I talked to Garrett earlier today, and he was more inclined to do a more limited days.
Here's my opinion on it. I'll get on my soapbox for just a second. I moved to Trophy Club in 1991, so I've lived here as a high school student, a college student, a newly married person. I've lived the gamut of all different levels of car driver, except retired with grandchildren, but hopefully I'll be there one day. I like this part of Trophy Club. I like this ordinance. I like the fact that we don't have a lot of cars on our street. I think it makes Trophy Club unique. I really do. I hated it when my brother went to work for American Freightways and he got home at 3 o'clock in the morning on the late shift, and we had to make a switch every once in a while, but we arranged and worked that out. I mean, I remember in high school having parties, and we would call up the police department and let them know that people were going to be out there later. It's just a responsibility that we took on ourselves. I think just to keep the town the way unique in Trophy Club, I'm more for allowing less permits and enforcing this. And I think that if we say, hey, all the college students that come back, you can spend $30 and get 90 free days, then it's not going to take long on the Twitter universe or whatever to say, hey, for $30, everybody can park their cars in the street, and then it's, it kind of looks like
Game on.
everything else.
I prefer a more stringent policy and would encourage a policy that's kind of like the old policy that we used to have, that keeps cars off the streets in the late hours of the night. That's just kind of my opinion. I might be in the minority, but, you know, I think if you're home from school and you're gonna live with your parents, you work that out. You might have lived there during high school, and I might, and, you know, that might not be the way it goes, but I'm in favor of the citizens of Trophy Club respecting their neighbors and their property values and what makes Trophy Club unique, and they take that extra effort to do it. So if we wanted to do a one-time permit for $50, something that's, you know, not real easy to obtain for 30 days, and maybe you can get one of those per year or something like that, I would support that. But I'm not in favor of this $10, you can get 30 days, $10, you can get another 30 days and 90 days and you leave again with 300 cars parked, you know, all out in the street. So might not be popular, but that's my opinion.
I support the idea of having the permits. I think it is unique to us. It keeps cars off the street. There are some times people have problems, like you were talking about, Garrett. You're out there shuffling cars around. I think the biggest complaint I get is people that have different work hours. The issue of I can't park it on the street if I try to get all of them in the driveway, and now the last car in the driveway means in the morning I got to move one to get out if I leave early. And that's probably their biggest complaint. Other than I have people that call and say, I'm a college student, I'm home for the summer, I don't want to pay the $150 for a permit. And I can surely understand that and have some empathy for that. So I like the idea of a temporary permit for 90 days. I don't want to necessarily shorten it so that I have to constantly renew it. Me personally, I just think that's an administrative issue not to deal with. And so I'm okay whether it's 10 or 20 or 30, whatever, for 90 days, as opposed to making them do it
Every month?
every month. That's just me. But anybody else have comments?
I'll really, in terms of the ends that I would like to achieve, throw in with Garrett here in that I think at the end of the day, what I would like to have happen is have conditions under which street parking is incredibly rare here. I'm of the mind that streets are engineered for cars to drive on. And NEVs and LSDs and whatever the hell else we were talking about 10 minutes ago. It was something. But I'm like, all I know is I got a truck and I wish I didn't have to pay a payment on it. I can't believe people are looking for more things to buy to drive around. But anyway, I love exactly what Garrett said. That's one of the reasons why Trophy Club stood out to me when I was looking at places to move as well. I understand the need for the temporary permit for someone who's going to be here seasonally, but I think I would rather see it the way Garrett proposed, which is that 90-day permit is high enough that it's not something someone can just do as an afterthought if they've got 2 cars they're working on and they want to keep them out on the street for the month or things like that. You start getting some creative uses of things. There's a guy on Indian Creek that has 5 cars and he gets them all into the driveway. And if that guy can do it, anybody can do it. And so I'm pretty much with Garrett 100%. Do we address in here the maximum number of permits per address at all?
It's only 2.
It's 2. Okay, then
But they're transferable among.
sure. Yeah, then that's all fine with me. Yeah.
All right, so anybody else want to comment on that? Yes, Tim?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Garrett and Ryland. You know, I think most of us were college kids at some time and could barely make our car payments. But we also had to pay for parking wherever we went. And, you know, it was a good life lesson when we came home and got a parking, ticket. And I couldn't get my diploma until I paid those tickets at the end of college. I just think, it should be high enough that it's a deterrent.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody wants, that extra, right or privilege to park on the street, then if they want to have a parking space down in Dallas, they're going to pay for a parking space somewhere. I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to do. And I think, we're hearing from a vocal few. But if you talk to all the neighbors around those homes, I think you would hear them say, we really don't want the people parking on the streets at night. That's one of the things we love about this community. That's my opinion.
All right, so the way it reads currently is, a temporary permit authorized by this section shall be issued for a period not to exceed 90 days, I assume, is that what it says? Yes, sir. The temporary permit fee shall be $10 and may be renewed one time per calendar year upon application for an extension and payment of the renewal fee. So you could get 120 days for $20.
Yeah, that's unacceptable.
The suggestion from Philip is a temporary permit authorized by this section may be issued for a period of 30 days. The temporary parking permit fee shall be $10. Any motor vehicle parked as permitted by this section shall be parked in front of the resident for which the temporary permit has been issued in such a manner as not to obstruct access to the private driveway. So what I'm hearing from people is that the $10 may be too low. I think that's what I'm hearing.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, Garrett, you were advocating for a minimum of 90 days as well, to just so that you wouldn't be stringing along tons of renewals, which would probably be a tough administrative thing.
Ryan, that'd be a maximum 90 days, right? I think he said.
No, I think he was saying that
There's a 90-day permit.
There's a
You
90
either
day-
get a year permit or a 90-day
Right.
permit.
If
Instead of
you,
calling
if
every
you,
month
if you
to
renew it,
renew,
then
renew.
it's better for you to get the year.
Right.
Yeah,
Do it
so
at
like 50,
$50.
fif-
Yeah.
The thing- but
would
what
be in
if-
favor of $50?
But there's, I mean, you have other breaks, you know, you have Christmas break, things like that, so what do you do in that situation?
what do they do
That's-
today?
That's the only reason I did the 30 days,
Yeah.
because, you know,
They park on the street and get a warning the first 2 times, and then they
Yeah,
and then they move their car.
Plus, you're
And then they're
authorizing
gone.
the police chief a period of 7 days.
yeah.
Right.
well, yeah, you
authorize
could do
that,
that,
so-
I don't know what spring. or-
Between the 7-day and then the benevolence of a first time of our police department on a first time or a rare offender in this case, the short period of time is kind of takes care of itself. I think your main issue is a long period of time, so a 90-day would be good.
So,
And one thing real quick, Nick. One thing, Philip, you're right, and please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I think you're trying to find a solution to the problem to get them to park. I'm not. I don't
No,
want them to
I-
be on
I-
the street.
and I don't-
So we're on the opposite sides of these arguments. I understand you're right. They might want to come and park at different times. I don't want them to park on the street. And I've walked in those shoes. I've
Yeah,
played
but did
musical
you like
cars.
that? I understand you did it.
Did
but
I
you
like it at the
getting
time?
up?
Probably not.
Would you have liked some alternative to park temporarily?
But I don't
while
think the
you were home?
neighbors would.
But it's not, we're not talking all year. We're only talking a short period of time while he's home from college.
Yeah, I guess I'd look at it from a different point of view. Every college kid who goes there and brings his car to college pays a fee to park that car that is at that college that is more than what we're asking for.
Of course,
Every
you know-
every kid, and all of a sudden they come home and nothing against college kids. I was one, but the college doesn't say, "Hey, I'm sorry, it's $10 a month." They say this is what the fee is. I mean, and they have to. Anybody who has a car has to pay a fee.
No, and I'm not disagreeing with the fee. I'm just saying, should there be provisions set up for that situation? When,
So I get
you
that.
know,
What would be wrong with $1 a day in 30-day increments? Where you want to park for 30 days, you pay $30. And then if you don't want to pay it on a monthly basis, buy a yearly permit.
harder to calculate and keep up with, in my opinion, if you do $1 a day.
Well, I know if you buy a 30-day permit, you got to buy it in bulks of 30-day permits. So the 30-day permit is $30. If you want 2 months, then it's $60.
I'll just say this, I'm for the
I am.
idea of having a temporary permit for some period of time. Fine for y'all to say you can go get a permit and pay something for it. What I hear from citizens is they take the risk, they do the best they can, but there are times that they're parking on the street. Sometimes their neighbors complain and call about it. You know, I don't want more control necessarily, and you're talking about more control and more enforcement. And it must not be a very big problem because they really haven't issued that many citations. So you're saying, I'm gonna be more restrictive so I get more citations, is what I hear. So I'm not in favor of not having temporary, and I think a temporary permit should be reasonable in its price.
Is there some merit to consider if you show that you're, as for a college student, let's say, if you show proof of being registered in college or something like that, that to getting a break. You know, you could get a 30-day pass.
And
I mean,
then you get into paperwork and you gotta prove and.
yeah.
No, They
Yeah.
have a student ID. They show it when they come up to get the permit.
Honestly, if we're talking about $100 or versus $50, just get a pass for a year. I mean, it's $100. Come up with $100 and you can park. There's one standard pass, there's one standard fee, and it makes it easier on staff and, you know, if
But
you're
it's
really not gonna.
150. You chose to leave it at 150 and 75 for the
No,
minimum.
we didn't.
You wanted to change
To
it.
100, yeah.
Oh, I
I think we
thought,
said 100 every year.
Yeah.
I think what's on the table is, do we want to issue for 90 days because we're a college student and make that fee $50?
I'd be in favor of making it easier on staff and say there's one permit.
all right.
Get them a sticker, put on the car,
Um,
the police can see a sticker, they know that they're.
I don't know that I hear a total consensus, Patricia. I think what I'm hearing is simplify it. Let's see if I say this and see if people disagree. Simplify it by saying that you just get one permit and you're eliminating temporary. Is that what I'm hearing? I don't like that. but-
I'm with you on this. I think that there should be a temporary permit, whether it be 90 days, $25, 90 days, $30. That I don't know, but, I mean, I agree with you, Nick, on this, that there should be some temporary provision.
So I hear two that says they should want a temporary. Anybody else want to comment to say leave the temporary?
I don't mind having a temporary. I think we can debate over the cost, but I can support a temporary if it's 90 days and no shorter.
Anybody else?
I'd support temporary. Just got a question for Lieutenant Shields.
All right, just a sec, before you do it, don't mind. All right, so what I'm hearing, Patricia, is leave a temporary clause in there and we'll deal with the dollar amount.
For 90 days. Is that what everybody thinks?
Leave it that way at this point and we'll deal with it when it comes back unless y'all can decide.
For $100, you can get a 90-day.
All right, Greg,
Yeah, Lieutenant Shields,
Yes, sir.
is this really a problem that doesn't exist at this time, or is it because of the newer sections in the Highlands that are smaller lots? Is it more prevalent over there?
The complaints don't seem to be more prevalent in any one particular section of town, so I don't think the width of the streets really affects it. It's a matter really of personal preference. The people who call don't like to see the cars there. You know, our goal, and the reason we tend to issue a warning before a citation, is to gain compliance. And, you know, if we issue those stickers, which if you've ever gotten one are extremely difficult to get off your car, tend to encourage some people to move the car in the driveway. But we do have to recognize the fact, I think, that with all these new residents, there are a lot of cars in town, and a lot of these driveways just can't accommodate that many. And certainly by addressing the time when we get our most complaints about the issuance of these warnings and citations are during the holidays and during the summer. So, I mean, effectively, if you're issuing a 90-day permit, that should eliminate the majority of the complaints we're seeing, which ultimately end up before you.
all right, so then the last change Philip wanted to address, page 301, section 4. Philip?
Yeah, the only, I wanted to clean up, and this is more probably for Patricia. If you have this annual permit or you have a temporary permit, I think that you should be parking right in front of your house. It shouldn't be, you know, you park 5 doors down in front of somebody else's house. And the only, you know, I just cleaned that up in that section. The only part I left that where you could, you know, park wherever is if the town or the MUD, you know, needed to perform some kind of driveway construction or something like that, and you had to, you know, park wherever you could find a parking
I
spot.
assume we're ignoring that when we're closing a street for construction and we're asking people to park a block away and walk. I assume we're
That'd be an exception.
kind of letting that one go, right? Okay, so Patricia, you had this email, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay, so you see that last change he's talking about. He's really just striking that says shall be parked in front of the residence for which the temporary permit has been issued,
Putting it
And
back in.
that's struck for,
just for that construction
Right.
exception. So if you're doing driveway work or they're doing road construction, you don't have to be in front of your house.
but otherwise, you should probably be parking right in front of your house, not somewhere else.
So Patricia, it sounds to me, because there's some debate here, that you'd bring it back for discussion as opposed to. All right, anybody else want to comment about that item?
I have a couple things, and it has to do with the understanding of the nature of why the ordinance exists and the sort of the public relations aspect of it. Reason being, by hearing everyone talk, and I've always said this from the jump, is that to me it was for aesthetics and safety, basically. But you get people who ask about it and they think that there was a red herring about street sweeping that circulated, and then other people think, well, you're just trying to make money. Well, anyone who looked at the dollar amounts here would know that's obviously not the case. 14 times $150, so whatever that is. So I don't know if it's appropriate to sort of give a refresher to our officers who might be writing citations, or anyone in the office that gets a question, to make sure and explain, first and foremost, it's safer not to have stationary vehicles on a street where people drive, and secondly, it looks nice. I mean, that's my opinion, but that would be kind of what I would recommend, just to make sure that people understand the nature of why we're making these decisions.
All right, I think you've done that.
And did we get the residency requirement for the company cars address?
Just, there's no more registration
No
requirement.
more registration.
And
Thank
it's nice having these ordinances way back. If you go back to 1986, that was basically what they said. It was a concern of safety of persons traveling, on the streets, and then also the health, safety, and welfare, which I think is boilerplate, but still,
Yeah.
they said it back then.
Looks good. Looks nice.
All right. That dealt with item 11. We will move on to item 12. Discussion to take appropriate action regarding water rate review request and Public Utility Commission of Texas appeal process. Council, we do have some additional information from legal counsel. So I'm going to propose we go on with the other items and then go into executive session to deal with item 12 when we come out.
I agree.
Any objection to that? All right. Item 13, Town Council Liaison Updates, discussion of same. Parks and Recs Board, October 19th, 2015, and Philip Schaffner is the council liaison.
It was actually a pretty simple night. Earl Bilbrey was his first time as chair and did a pretty good job. Basically, they just discuss input concerning potential future capital improvements, and they talked just anything park related was talked about that night, and I think it's something that they will deal with in future meetings on what their priorities are, so that they can then present that to us, and that's about it. They named a vice chair and a
Who's the vice chair?
town vice chair.
You know everything. I can't believe you didn't remember that.
Stump the Schaff.
Not sure.
Man, you're gonna hear about
And Adam's not here to.
Where's Adam?
He's doing final Halloween judging.
Yeah.
It was a very capable person.
All right, maybe we need to reconsider who's the liaison.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Just thought of a future agenda item.
See it as the mayor pro tem and the mayor were both there. Although the mayor did leave, he may not. I think they named those while you were there.
No, they
though.
didn't.
But all I saw was Nick Baker going like this.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Item 14, Town Manager Sadel's update regarding the following discussion and provide input regarding same: early voting dates, implementation of Laserfish, community cleanup, and fall festival. Stephen.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we have 3 more days remaining of early voting, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Tomorrow is on Wednesday, 8 to 5, and then Thursday and Friday is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd, and it will be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. If you're a Tarrant County voter who resides in Trophy Club, you'll need to go to Fellowship Church in Keller, which is on 2525 Florence Road, and I believe that's at the intersection of Florence and Davis, Precinct Line Road. There in, it's Keller South Lake, right on that border there. It's on the west side of the road. So There's early voting information. Laserfish, as you heard Councilmember Schaffner referencing Laserfish, that's our new records management software. That went live to the public on Friday. I think they'll find it very useful and helpful. It's got a lot of really good features to it and searchability or search capabilities to it. I think most people who have started piddling around with it will find it nice. You know, we've got most of just everything on there from the last couple of years fully uploaded, and then we've got everything going back. At least ordinances was our last piece, and we should have that done now,
Yes.
going back to incorporation. And this is something that will continue to grow. It's not a one-time deal. It's something records and the management of our records is a big focus for me and for our staff, and trying to make them more accessible and more readily available and easier to find. And this it helps with transparency. And this is something that we're going to continue to focus on, and we'll keep adding to this. From here on out, it will become our standard. Community cleanup. That was the rescheduled date from a month ago. It's on Saturday at 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Byron Nelson High School parking lot below the water tower. And that's where we have household hazardous waste disposal, shredding, bulk item disposal, and electronics recycling available. It is a first come, first serve, and it's 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. We try to make sure that if you're in line, we'll make sure we try to get you, but it's always best to get there early, and we're going to be working on some of the processes. We've talked to Allied about that and how to make it try to perhaps run a little bit smoother. It's rain or shine, so we're hoping that the weather holds out for us. It looked like today, maybe Friday is rain and Saturday is nice, but we'll have to see. So please come out, and this is an opportunity to kind of clean out your garages and your houses for the fall and the winter. And then finally, Fall Festival. This was really a great success. We had about 1,000 people attend this, and it was at Trophy Club Park. Last year we had about 600, so it was about a 40% increase over the year before, which is really, really great. And one of the reasons why is that we partnered with the Fellowship United Methodist Church that supplied a lot of the volunteers, as well as the 30th anniversary committee that supplied volunteers, and that attracted a lot of folks to come to the event. We had a lot of fun activities: pumpkin decorating and pie eating contests, donut bobbing, hay rides, face painting, hot dogs, and I think a lot of folks just enjoyed the day. We got lucky with some really good weather compared to the following weekend where we had some rain. But one of the things that was very nice about this event is that it kind of gauged what we can do in the park, and we figured out that we could park probably about 400 vehicles there, which kind of helps us understand what is the park's capability for other large-scale events. What can we do? And so it was kind of a good test for that. Great job to the Parks and Rec folks and Public Safety and other departments that helped pull this together, as well as the volunteers and the staffs from a lot of the churches who really made this festival work. And it's going to continue to evolve, but this was a great step forward.
It's Jim Hanna, Vice Chair, and Dean Murray, Secretary.
Two residents.
Two residents of Trophy Club.
Great having a computer in front of you, isn't it?
All right, so the only thing I would offer up is a comment, Stephen, on community cleanup. The complaint last year was people waited in line and then you cut it off, and they had waited a long time. Were you going to try to address the issue of if it looks crowded, you go out 30 minutes ahead and say this is the end of the line?
Yeah, that's what we're going to try to do. Last time, I'll say, having done every cleanup event in Trophy Club over the last 8 years being there, that was the most, that was the busiest one I've ever seen happen. I don't know, it was like a perfect storm of things, I guess. I've never seen one that busy before. When I worked in Colleyville, we had that issue where we would fill up in about 30 or 40 minutes, and we would have to go tell people, sorry, we're already full. And so we've never had that, but this time we came really close to filling up, and the time, it was just unbelievable, the response. So we want to try to get ahead. We want to make sure, the process for getting people through, trying to make that improved. It was Allied's first time doing it, as they've taken over that event for us, and they manage all the vendors. So I think they learned a lot from that. And so I know Pat Cook and his staff have been working with Allied to make sure that this is a smooth event. But yes, we want to make sure that people know if we're full or it's cut off, that we don't have them sit through the line and just wait for.
Is there a reason why it's only 2 hours?
That has been the history of the event. It's something we can look at into the future.
I mean, we're, double the amount of population now that we
Just
may
out of-
want to,
Yeah.
increase
Curiosity.
increase the size.
Yeah, I would say that in the past, 2 hours has been fine. It's really this last time where it was
We'll know this year again.
we'll see
I mean, we'll see how this,
how
we'll
this
gauge
one
it.
goes. If it continues to have that kind of thing, I think we have to reevaluate kind of, how we want to work this event.
Right.
And I
Good.
think spring
Yeah, just out of curiosity, do you recall how long the Colleyville one was for?
It was 2 hours.
Still even Colleyville.
All right. If no other questions, we'll move on to item 15. Issues for future agenda, including discussion of agenda items for consideration on upcoming regular session council agenda for November 10th, 2015. Meeting and discussion of future agenda items. A, discussion authorizing the mayor to issue proclamation to lower flags to have staff at times of national tragedy, when there is a delay in doing so. Pero asked that to be there. There was a little confusion last time. Maybe you didn't notice it, but at least Jim and I did. Holly is putting a lettered item underneath that future agenda item that's saying these are the items that have hit the 90-day trigger. So remember, we have that future agenda item, and we're putting a 90-day trigger on it to say if we hadn't done anything with it, bring it back, and council give direction. So it was listed last time, and Jim thought that meant it would just go on the next agenda. And we didn't really say that in the meeting, and so it didn't. It was just a reminder that it was hitting the 90-day trigger. So the first item is this lowering of flag issue. Jim proposed this item. He provided some information to you via email, and he handed out another sheet tonight. And so before we go down the rest of the list, Jim, do you want to say anything, or do y'all have any questions about this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, hopefully you've had a chance to read through the initial presentation, which pointed out the reason I brought this up, number one, the fact that it had caused quite a bit of national concern about the time passed before the flag was lowered to half-staff to honor the 5 servicemen that were killed by a Islamic terrorist in Chattanooga. And then it points out the inconsistencies over the past 4 years of when the flag was or was not lowered. And as a veteran, and having spoken to a number of veterans and some active military personnel, would like to be able to make sure that kind of oversight doesn't occur again. And looking at the flag code on page 2 of your handout, it points out the reality that the flag code itself is a guide in the third sentence of the flag code for handling and display of the stars and stripe. It does not impose penalties for misuse of the flag, which is unfortunate. And it's left to the states and to federal government and District of Columbia to set its own flag law. And of course, the states do have their own law. It goes on to point out in the next 3 bullet points that the displaying of the flag horizontally in football games and so on is contrary to the flag code, yet it's done all the time. Frequently, military personnel are holding the flag horizontally, and that's contrary to the code. United States postage stamps are printed and issued contrary to Section 80 of the flag code, and yet they're sold by the United States Post Office. The next page points out flag T-shirts with words written across them. Section 8D says that the flag should never be used as wearing apparel, and yet the next paragraph I point out that the T-shirts we wore had a outline of the United States with a black and white flag superimposed over them. There were people with ties and hats and vests with similar kind of markings. The American Legion looks at it and says that's not a problem because those are not actual flags. Yet the flag code says if it's a design and it's a resemblance of the flag, then it should be prohibited. And finally, are there any penalties? The answer is no. For private citizens, they could do what they want, and that's fine. I then looked at the Congressional Research Services report, which went over the flag code for the display and so on. And specifically, when it comes to half-staff, CRS 11 points out that flying the flag at half-staff in the last section says, no federal restrictions or court decisions are known that limit such an individual's lowering his own flag or make such displays alone a form of desecration. And so if an individual is permitted to do it if they choose, it seems to me that in respect for the military and other individuals who are deserving of that respect, that certainly we could consider doing that as well. The next two sections outline in yellow does not prescribe penalties for noncompliance, nor does it include enforcement provisions. The code functions simply as a guide for voluntarily being followed by civilians and civilian groups. And the next paragraph, the background, different interpretations of various provisions of the code may continue to be made. Therefore, actions not specifically included in the code may be deemed acceptable as long as proper respect is shown. And based on that, I got with Patricia, and the mayor and I also talked, and before you tonight is a suggested policy, not a proclamation, but a general policy, which provides a rationale for allowing the town manager to lower the flag. And part of that rationale I included here is the last paragraph regarding the Flag Protection Act of 1989, which was struck down as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court of the United States. And in that finding, even the disrespect of the flag, burning the flag or soiling the flag or walking on the flag is permitted under the First Amendment. And so my train of thought is if that's permitted under the First Amendment, certainly lowering the flag to half-staff to honor certain individuals, which is covered in the policy below, by lowering the flag to half-staff should be an equally protected right. And then I have the policy that I drafted and Patricia and I went over briefly, and it would cover doing so for local military personnel, local police officers, firefighters, public officials, or distinguished Trophy Club residents upon their death, or, as in the case of Chattanooga, at times of national, state, or local tragedy. And then the town manager could then give instruction to lower the flag to half-staff to respectfully honor those persons who gave their lives in public service.
All right,
that's
so
my proposal.
we are not agendaed to debate this item, but I thought it was appropriate to let Jim provide more information for you. And if there's no objection, request of Stephen that it be placed as an agenda item for our next meeting, and if all possible, be able to make a decision on it. So the first direction would be, does anybody object to saying, at least the way it's drafted back to us as a policy, as the town manager makes that decision? The town manager frowned when I said that.
Do we,
I'm not a big fan of that, but that's just me personally.
do we object to it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I would object to that.
okay. So are you objecting to the town manager or just in general?
I had,
Well, let me say this.
It's
We're not
hard not to
debating the
debate
issue.
this.
We're not debating the entire issue. It's just, in order to give Patricia direction,
in situations like that, short of it being a confined to local control. In other words, what Stephen controls, council, mayors, Trophy Club residents, under his purview, I would be reluctant to open it up, have it open-ended like that, without that going probably before council.
okay. So we'll debate that when it comes fully before us. I'm just trying to say, you want the mayor to do it or the town manager to do it?
I think it should be council.
Well, the problem with council doing it is you have to wait for a council meeting. And that's what they're trying, that's what Jim is trying to address partly, is some temporary authority to do it. If you have to wait 2 weeks to do it, the event has all passed.
I would recommend for the purpose of discussion, it might be more appropriate to draft it, giving that authority to the mayor. And then when we debate it, we can
Deal with it, okay.
deal with it. I have, on that same line, I have two things I'd like to have looked at.
All right.
One being the part of this that Jim prepared for us mentioned that each state has its own flag law. So I assume, as with most things, when you guys bring them to us, that you cross-reference against that and make sure there's no conflict there. And then the second thing being, if we are assigning or considering assigning a duty or responsibility to the mayor, being that that's going to be a responsibility that belongs only to the mayor, is there anything in our charter that prevents us from doing that through ordinance?
And along those lines, I would like to know what our current policy is. You know, who checks a website, who gets a fax,
We get issued a decree. It's sent out saying that flags, that it's been, either the governor has done this, or the president has done this, or there's some type of congressional act that's caused this to happen.
But I think Philip's talking about if there's a local death or something.
Well, and I think
That's what
that,
he's
and
talking
that's, without debating the issue, that's my concern is, who is a distinguished Trophy Club citizen?
right.
And you're asking
And that's-
me to make that
Reese
decision on
Batista?
who that is.
And who do you?
And then who do
make
you
mad?
lower at floor, and to be honest, we could be lowering the flag. And then, in some of these cases, they say it's only one flag in town that's done. It's not all the flags that's done, because now to lower those big flags, it's not easy to do. I mean, it's not hard,
Right.
but you have staff going out there lowering the flags, putting them up. How long do they do it for? We might be lowering flags every day.
Okay, so you're marching, you're
So-
crossing the
so-
line about debating.
So what I would like to know is who gets that and who is responsible to lower, and what flags do we lower? We need to have some understanding of that.
So
going
that'll be
into it.
part of what's provided in the packet. All right. So if there's no objection, Stephen, let's prepare it for the next agenda, if at all possible. And I've asked Jim and Patricia to at least work to try to get it as close to what you want to propose as possible, so that we don't sit here for an hour debating it and not have any direction. All right. So then I'll call your attention to page 316 in the packet. It is the planned agenda for our November the 10th. One thing that I would bring up under two things. First of all, Holly, it'd be nice to maybe add a column number to that spreadsheet so that I could refer to line 8 or whatever.
Line 8, okay,
It'd be easier to kind of have a column number or a row number, I should say. So where you have a future agenda items and you have A that lists parking lot between the baseball fields, based on my looking at future agenda, item 6 on future agenda dealt with garage sale, estate sales, that kind of thing comes up November 24th, and we are currently talking about not having a November 24th meeting.
I did catch that after the fact, so it's gonna be actually, that first meeting in December.
All right.
Caught that after the packet went.
And so, all right, so, anybody see anything on that November 10th agenda that you want addressed specifically?
Two things, as you had mentioned about the flag being misinterpreted as far as being on the agenda. Maybe perhaps, just like executive session and regular session, you want to put a little blue line there for like a 90-day trigger, or this way it's clear that it's just
And-
coming back for review so that staff can give us an update.
Yeah.
That's the reason, all right, yeah, put the trigger date, I guess on that same line A where it says Reed submitted that on August the 11th, put the trigger date to show that it's there, maybe.
And then my second thing is the Holiday Inn. That was on the agenda, came off the agenda. It's sort of like
Something like other building.
Actually, we'll let Stephen give an update about that, but they're proposing bringing some amendments to their site plan back to
Right.
P&Z and council, so that's
right.
where it is.
And that's why, that's the opportunity, I think, for that item on future agendas to be addressed, because you're going to have the contractor and more than likely the property owner as well. And you can ask questions to them regarding the status of their construction project.
All right, so let's move on to then page 317 and 318. On page 317, the way I look at it is item 4 has been dealt with. Is that right? It could be removed.
Well, there are other organizations. Have we dealt with them
It
Mm.
yet?
says baseball.
It says baseball.
And other organized sports groups?
Where does that say that?
Baseball tournaments.
I was just looking at that.
I don't
That's
see
the
others.
subcommittee.
Yeah, it can be. I think we're good.
All right, item 4 can be removed.
Right here.
Items,
I just quickly looked at it.
In red, sports subcommittees.
Oh, I'm looking at the, remove it.
all right, item 6. Again, we're looking at moving that to December. Item 7, I think we have dealt with, and it's coming back to us, so it could be removed.
Number 7, I didn't think we had any changes.
Review the ordinance allowing golf carts. Right, I'm saying it can remove from here.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Is that right?
It's not coming back.
It's not
to us.
coming
Yeah, I'm
back,
sorry,
though.
not coming back. So 6 and 7 are, 7's coming off. 6 is gonna go to another date. 9, I think we just dealt with in the sense of it's coming back to us, right?
Correct.
So it could be removed from future agenda. And 12 is coming back to us, so it could be removed. So we just eliminated a number of them. Anybody see anything that should be eliminated or have something they want to add? All right.
Is 11 moving to December as well?
That was the intent, since we're not having that November 24th meeting, was to move those to the first meeting in December. And the only one that's coming up for an update is Reed's item for the November 11th. That will be the only update.
All right. Okay. We have finished our items on our agenda except for item 12. And so at this time, I'm going to take us into executive session. We'll have a discussion and we'll come back out and deal with item 12. It is 8:17 and we will go into executive session at the end of me reading this. Pursuant to the following designated sections of the Texas Government Code, annotated Chapter 551, Texas Open Meetings Act, the council will convene into closed executive session to discuss the following. Texas Government Code, Section 551.0712, consultation with attorney in order to consult with its attorney on the matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflict with the Open Meetings Act. A, legal advice regarding water rate review request and Public Utility Commission of Texas appeals process. We are in closed session and we're going to do it in this room. So I'll ask people to move. It is 8:45 and we will reconvene into regular session. Item 17, consider take appropriate action regarding the executive session. And item 12, discuss and take appropriate action regarding a water rate review request and Public Utility Commission of Texas appeals process. For weeks now, the town has been trying to understand the appeal process from the Public Utility Commission. We have had conversations with attorneys in Austin and have had conversations with Public Utility Commission. At the previous council meeting, council took action to use its committee of council members to investigate financial matters and directed them to do so with staff. That committee did ask Assistant Town Manager Stephen Glickman to meet with Mr. Bill Rose, go over Bill's data and presentation information, and be able to meet with the committee to help us come up with a plan. So Mr. Glickman did meet with Mr. Rose, and Mr. Rose provided spreadsheets and all sorts of data to us. On October the 26th, the committee met with the town manager and the assistant town manager and looked at the data and also reviewed information that we had from attorneys and PUC. Therefore, I move to direct the town manager to contact the MUD general manager to collect some more information that the committee felt was missing in order for us to make a fair evaluation of the data. And in that request, to try to see if they could get the data prior to our next council meeting, it is our understanding that November the 9th, the PUC comments would be coming out. And so we're trying to have data by the time they do so. I have a motion before the body. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Pero. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion to request more information, town manager to talk to the MUD manager, raise your hand. All opposed, same sign. It is unanimous. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Pero, seconded by Councilmember Rowe. All in favor, show your hands. We are adjourned at 8:47.